The last meeting was on April 17th, 2013, 8 a.m. The board members present were Jim Hecht, Renee Spikes, Bill Metter, Jim Ward, Kenny Spitzer. Members absent were Leslie Cheney and Tammy Lackey. Others present was Deborah Daniels and Carla Clark. The meeting was called to order by Jim Hecht. Minutes of the previous meeting were read by Deborah Daniels. Renee Spikes made motion to approve as read. Motion seconded by Jim Ward. Motion carried. Deborah Daniels gave a report on health insurance research for the CAD. Board members discussed the findings. Deborah Daniels then gave a report on the State Reviewer being in office from April 9th to the 11th and some areas the CAD are working on. The Board of Directors discussed Section 6.05I, Section 6.06B, and Section 6.06C of the State Property Tax Code regarding the Board Secretary's duties. Jim Ward made a motion to have the Chief Appraiser to perform the Board Secretary's duty on her behalf. Kenny Spitzer seconded the motion. The motion carried. The Board of Directors then discussed amendments to the reappraisal plan, noting no reference made how the Board should handle amendments in Section 6.05I and Section 25.18 of the State Property Tax Code. Due to the reappraisal plan not passing state review, Jim Ward made a motion to have the Chief Appraiser present any amendments of the reappraisal plan to the Board for approval. Renee Spikes seconded the motion, and the motion carried. Amendments for the 2013-2014 reappraisal were asked to be presented at the next Board meeting. The Board then had discussion of the county placing the building on the CAD lots for storage. Renee Spikes made a motion to allow the placement of a storage building in trade of the county maintaining all the lots owned by the CAD. Kenny Spitzer seconded the motion. The motion carried. Next on the agenda was charges for copies by the CAD. Kenny Spitzer made a motion to charge 25 cents for copies to the general public not related to the operation of the CAD and $5 for copies of maps requested by landmen, realtors, and others that are not the taxpayer landowner of the map parcel being requested. Seconded by Jim Ward. The motion carried. Section 6.09 of the State Property Tax Code regarding the designation of a district depository was then discussed. Renee Spikes made a motion to extend the depository contract for one additional term, a 2-year period. Kenny Spitzer seconded the motion, and the motion carried. The finance report was then presented to the Board, along with a rough draft of the budget for 2014. No action was taken at this time. The request from TCDRS to have funds automatically debited from our CAD account was discussed. No action was taken due to a vote not necessary to leave as is. Deborah Daniels then presented the Deputy Appraiser's 6-month evaluation. The Board discussed a raise matching the Chief Appraiser raise. Renee Spikes made a motion to give the Deputy Appraiser a $3,500 raise. Jim Ward seconded the motion. The motion carried. Jim Ward made a motion to adjourn. Motion seconded by Renee Spikes. Motion carried.
Any additions or corrections?
I move we accept them as read.
Second.
Second.
In favor?
Me?
We'll turn it over to you.
Okay. It's all right if I just sit at the table with them?
You bet you. I tried to hand out before y'all sit down. You should have an annual financial report, 50-plus page document, plus you've got the little, what we call the executive summary. It's a color page, and I'm going to do my presentation just like I always do. Just to remind you of how that works, the executive summary, I like to use that for 2 purposes. Number one, it gives you a quick little summary that you can look at instead of having to remember what is all the critical stuff inside the report, the annual financial report, and then my auditor's reports. Hopefully, if there's something critical, I'll put it on the executive summary, so you got a 1-page summary you can take away with you. Probably for my purposes too, a little quick outline where I don't spend just roll page by page. We've got an outline, you can see the page references on the executive summary. That goes inside the annual financial report. So if you've got a question on a particular part of the executive summary, you can actually go into the report, and that page reference is listed there for you. All right, before I get into the details of looking at a couple, and I do want to look at some schedules inside the report, just to remind you that, and it's real critical in the environment that I operate out of this particular time, and I'm no different than Deborah or those of you that are in business for yourself, or whatever. You know the rules and regulations and dotting your I's and crossing your T's have become very critical. I've sat and listened to her read the minutes and all the references to the property tax code, and it just makes you want to go, you know. But I live in that same environment every day, and so I understand that. One of the things that are a part of that, particularly when we're doing what we call a test services, and audit services are test services in our environment, is we're supposed to communicate to administration of our audited entities and those charged with governance. That's the term they use for boards, those charged with governance. Just make sure and communicate on the onset of the audit, and I send an email out, and I don't know whether you printed that and mailed that to y'all as a board, or whether it's forwarded email. But there's an initial planning email we send out, and then when we present the report, we make sure and cover a few of the things, and I've got a little report I'll cover in the back. But just to give you a general idea, the main thing with those communications has to do with making sure we understand what the auditor's responsibility is and what the auditee's responsibility is, okay? And of course, for y'all, it sort of seems esoteric in some respect, but it's important that I communicate that to you. And there needs to be an understanding by all of you that this report, notice it's an annual financial report. It doesn't say auditor's report. It's often referred to as an audit report. But it really is your documentation. It's your data. You know, the staff here, y'all generate that data. Y'all do the accounting. My responsibility is to come in and, you know, review that data, audit it, add some authenticity to the report as I attach opinions to this report. But ultimately, it is your report, the administration of the district, plus you as the board. To the point is, you're not absolved of responsibility of the report. You're just engaging me to assist you with that. And I always like to give this example. I always say, well, what do you mean by all of that? Your responsibility. When this report goes out, let's say the state comptroller requests a copy of it, and they look at it, and there's something they don't understand inside that. Who are they going to call? They're going to call her. You know? It's her responsibility. Now, she's probably 5 minutes off, she gets on the phone with the state comptroller, she's going to call me. And I'm there, but primarily to third parties and outside people, this is still y'all's report, okay? You are really releasing it and everything else. So I know that's sort of but it's really important that you understand that y'all as a board and as administration, chief appraiser of the district, still have that responsibility. All right, that's enough said between that. I've got one little report I'll cover in the past. Let's look a little bit at the operating results. Let's turn to page 19 inside the report. And we're still operating under GASB 34, which is a major governmental accounting standards board statement that governs the presentation of governmental financial statements. And on GASB 34, it's been around since 2002. We're going on almost 10 years here, and as far as the effective date. And the presentation of the GASB 34, to sort of put them, has very summary statements, and you get the detail toward the back. So we're looking at a very summary statement here of your operating results, and I'm just going to go quickly through those and see you collected exactly what you budgeted as far as general government, intergovernmental revenue for appraisal, the $139,720. You had collection revenue of $25,149, that comes from the school, the only entity that you collect for. We had investment earnings, man, it's not much, those interest rates are pretty low, $226 we're getting on those CDs we have. And other revenue, $2809 for tax certificates and other types of miscellaneous revenue. Those totaled $167,904. Now, as far as expenditures, broken down simply on this schedule between your two different departments. Your appraisal services, your expenditures were $153,032. The collection services expenditures amounted to $25,149. You got total expenditures of $178,181. We had a net change in fund balance of negative $10,277. We started the year with a fund balance of $48,143. We ended with $37,866. Now, one thing I would like to point out is, y'all, if you really look closely at this statement, notice that the intergovernmental revenue for collections and the expenditures for collections both are the same numbers. Okay? You've read that well. When you really think about it, your contract with the school is purely on a reimbursement basis only. Okay? So it's sort of a one goes in conjunction of the other. You know, the school pays you the quarterly payments on that, but that really, you don't earn that revenue until you actually incur the expenditures you're being reimbursed for. So at any particular point or time period, if you cut it off, then you either are holding some of the school's money or they owe you money, and the revenues and expenditures earned are exactly identical. It will always be that way as long as that contract is that way, okay? So that sort of looks funny. Let me show you how that plays out as far as the balance sheet. Turn back 2 pages on page 17. And you can see when you start looking at the cutoff of the balance sheet at December 31st, 2012, we had cash of $68,263, investments in those CDs of $24,558. We've got a little bit of money owed to us from the tax collection fund of $345. That's basically all your assets. You have a little payroll liabilities you owed for. And notice, and this is new, y'all. If y'all remember the statements from a year ago, this is something that came in with GASB 63. You'll probably remember, it used to be, the old terminology was deferred revenue, and it was listed under a liability. And what GASB 63 did is says, okay, you know, a deferred revenue is really not a liability. You don't owe for it. You've just got money you're holding you hadn't earned yet. And so they changed the terminology of that and listed it separately, presented separately. It's called deferred inflow of resources. I really like this because from a pure presentation standpoint, I'd always go down and say, I'd start talking about liabilities for payroll, accounts payable, payroll liabilities. I'd say deferred revenue, and everybody would frown a little bit. It's like, how is deferred revenue a liability? You know, it's not something we owe for. So this sort of separates those type of things out, and they call them deferred inflow of resources, okay? You'll notice that cash balance is $68,000. That's because of the deferred inflow of resources. To continue on with the collections analysis, you can see we had money we were holding. The school district, actually, we had 5506 that was deferred, money that they had paid on as far as their collections contracts. And y'all remember that runs, was it October through September, something like that. It's a collection period year. And so during any particular cutoff period, that will either be a plus or they'll either owe us money or we'll have deferred inflow of resources. Bottom line though, when you come back to assets, less liabilities, deferred inflow resources, you see we come back to that fund balance we talked about of $37,866, which was the same number. All right, now just as further analysis, let's look over on page 51. Page 51 is a detailed budget comparison schedule. It's sort of formatted in this. It's got the original budget adopted, It's got the final amended budget, and y'all did tweak the budget a little bit, not significantly, but, there were some changes along the way during the year. It's got actual final expenditures and the variance between final and actual. Not really any surprises here, as far as the way I look at it. The only thing I wanna point out is down at the bottom of the appraisal services, you can see that y'all had the unbudgeted items, you've got your mapping services, that was the second payment of that particular mapping contract, software, whatever is all involved in that. That's $10,518, y'all have it, I think y'all elected to pay for that out of your fund balance and not include that in your particular budget, at least that was true for 2012. So when you start looking at that negative amount of $10,000 that we had, as far as our operating results, you gotta consider that there was $10,518 worth of unbudgeted items in there. And that's generally how I present that, simply so the expenditure and budget comparison, unless that unbudgeted item down the line. Any questions on that? Does that make sense to y'all? All right, just to sort of close out that particular thing, I'd like to move you back to, let's move back to page 45. Page 45, as y'all probably remember, section 6.06 of the property tax code, it really calls for your actual costs for the district to be allocated based on their levy for the particular time period we're talking about, and any excess is required to be refunded in absence of other board encumbering of those funds or whatever, required to be refunded for those particular entities. Like actual cost, allocation, any excess. Now, what happens with this particular year, since y'all had that unbudgeted mapping services payment that you paid for, you know, we really got a deficit for the year at $10,277. So when you technically look at the property tax code allocation, no refund is required, okay? Because you actually spent more money, your expenditures exceed your revenues, so there's no refund required for that section 16.7, okay? So no action to be taken. I still show the allocation by entity or whatever, but again, no action to be taken on that because of spending that $10,000. If you really look at it, probably you wouldn't have that up anyway. You took that $10,000 out of the loop, it basically is almost break even. Any questions on that? Does that make sense to y'all? Okay? All right, that basically covers the financial operating results part of it. Let me hit you with a few audit things. There again, so just so I cover everything, let's turn back to page 2. Talk about a couple of the GASB statements that have changed. There's also been a change in auditing standards and auditors' reports as a part of what is generated in occupation that's called the Clarity Project. The Clarity Project is they've taken all the auditing standards and they sort of, as the name implies, trying to clarify them, tweak them a little bit. One of the things they've done is the basic report that we put attached to any type of annual financial report. It looks a little different. Let me tell you what looks different. If you pull out last year's audit, you see the bolded areas, management responsibility, auditor's responsibility. Remember, I talked about that for about 5 minutes when we started the presentation. They want to make it very clear that it's listed you start out your auditor's opinion, you list what y'all's responsibility is and what my responsibility is. Hopefully, I did an adequate job of covering that in the first 5 minutes. If you'll really turn over to page 3, you get a chance to really look at the basic opinion. And that's the important part. Again, as I said up front, it's not my report. I'm simply issuing an opinion on these financial statements, adding authenticity, and how that reads. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of Stonewall CAD as of December 31st, and respective changes for the year that ended, in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So, a wordy sentence and paragraph to say that I think these financial statements are fairly presented. Okay? All right, let's look a few other little deals as far as auditor results or opinions. I'll tell you what, let's move you back to the summary page, which is on page 55. Page 55. Page 55 is a schedule of findings and responses is a required schedule if it's a Yellow Book compliant audit. And while y'all are not required to have a Yellow Book compliant, by the way, Yellow Book is issued by the Governmental Accountability Office, actually required if you receive federal assistance. But we generally like to do all our governmental audits, whether required or not, in accordance with Yellow Book standards. It's a little higher standard than just basic governmental accounting standards, and we do a little bit more of paperwork as a result of it. But as a general rule, your quality is a little higher if you follow Yellow Book standards. That schedule of findings and responses, I like it because if there's anything inside this report, auditors' opinions, compliance problems, internal control findings, you'll find them listed here, okay? Now, if you'll look on that summary of auditor's results, you can see we issued an unqualified opinion. We didn't issue or detail any significant deficiencies in internal control or material weaknesses, and we didn't encounter any material noncompliance. Now, that doesn't mean that you might not have some noncompliance, but noncompliance which could have material effect on the financial statements. We didn't encounter any of those. So you basically get a clean opinion report as far as all the auditors' opinions and results. One last thing I want to run by you is, let's move on over to page 58. And there again, this is that final communication with those charged with governments at conclusion of the audit engagement. And these are the kind of things that I'm required to communicate to you at conclusion of this and the release of the financial statements, whether or not there were significant audit findings, whether or not you had any change in accounting policies, accounting practices from prior years, whether or not any of those were outside of the scope of generally accepted governmental accounting practices. Obviously, you didn't have anything in that area. Whether or not we had any difficulties in performing the audit, required to detail those. Move on over to page 59. Whether or not, if I suggested that you make adjustment or changes, whether or not you made those or didn't make those, and whether they were material. Whether or not we had any disagreements with management. A reminder that we do get management representation as after review of this final report. Whether I was aware of any consultation with other accountants in regard to use of accounting policies or et cetera. And then I file any other audit findings or issues that should be reported to you as a board. And you can see that there are no negative items inside any of that. So you have basically got a clean presentation here as far as your annual financial report. All right. That said, I know I've gone through it pretty hurriedly, hit you with a lot of stuff, pretty standard stuff, other than the format changes that are required under auditing and accounting standards. Do y'all have any questions of me? Well, let me, just to close out my presentation, indicate that, and I think Deborah has just taken over when I presented this report last fall, but, just a few things. The fact that I'm here earlier tells me that we got pushed from your administration to do it a little quicker, which is good. and that means that they're on top of things and trying to improve things. I think things are moving along pretty well. I'm always at your input at the altar, anytime I have a changeover in either the chief's appraiser or key accounting staff, I'm always wondering how it's gonna go, you know? And I think it's gone super well, and things are looking in good shape from my standpoint as far as your financial records, so. Y'all got any other questions on me? I guess if we can get formal board approval for release of this report, then I'll get out of here.
They will make a motion to accept this report.
I'll make the motion.
Second. All those in favor?
All right. Well, listen, I appreciate the opportunity to get to provide this service for you. Like I said, we enjoyed coming over and working with your staff here, and I welcome the opportunity. If y'all run into a question or have anything you'd like to ask me, our phone number's on the letterhead and a couple of pages in here. You can call me anytime. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Y'all have a good day.
Okay, on number 5 there, amendments to the reappraisal plan. What do we have on this?
Okay, I gave the information, all the information I had to Mr. Petrie. Mr. Petrie went ahead and he updated everything in the reappraisal plan. We've had some discussions, we left some of the stuff, we reworded a lot because of the fact, we are a two-person appraisal district. He had a lot of different staff. He had it, you know, really centered towards a bigger county than what we had. A lot of our stuff that was in here was geared towards, well, this group does this, these appraisers do this. Well, we don't have that. We do, everybody in here, which is two, we do everything. So we had to go back and he went ahead and he reworded everything to where it has appraisers, it doesn't say staff, it'll say two people, two employees, two whatever, but he has it in there to where it's just us. It's not a big group of people that's doing it. He did leave where we were on saying that the market was not. We did not put the market as countywide due to the fact that the houses in town are different from the houses out of town. They don't have the economic factors in, such as they're not as close to the stores. They don't have access to the school as close, you know, as like we do, like the post office, the hospitals. We went ahead and left it as it was because we do have different economic factors such as that. Plus, we have in town we have city water, we have the sewage where we can, you know, actually use that instead of having to use septic tanks and stuff like that. So we left the rule as it was, and we went ahead because that's what more or less what we do anyway. That's why we have to do it. We cannot break it in neighborhoods such as Taylor County in Abilene. They've got they have different neighborhoods. They'll have certain person did this neighborhood, certain person did this neighborhood. Or we went ahead and adjusted all that. That's been let's see, what else did we do? Of course, we've taken out, as you say, it's thinner. We took out the use pack because you know that's what we have to go by. This is mass appraisal. We took out the use pack in the back of the book because that was just extra paper. Went ahead and took out P&As. P&As, we've got a separate one in there for them anyway, so it's not actually in this amendment. We didn't amend anything for them. Theirs is fine. Our calendar, we left the calendar in. This is what we have to go by. We did not add any extra dates, although, Mrs. Liz Langford, whenever she came in, she said that we needed to do this and do this on our calendar. Well, this is our calendar, we have to go by this calendar. We can't just, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, when we have to go by this calendar. So we went ahead and left this calendar in there, we didn't add anything. Now she may throw that back at us again, but if she does, I'll visit with her on it. This is something every district has to do, and that's the reason we left it in here.
Will these amendments bring us in compliance with the reappraisal plan, you think?
That's what I hope. I took because she went over it page by page on the other one. And I gave all the notes that I had to Mr. Petrie. And Mr. Petrie and I sat and we discussed them. He sent me up several emails and discussed it back and forwards on the emails. And I've reread it. I had him correct a few things that I said, we still have to do this. We still have, but I think it will work. My own opinion. The only thing that I'm kind of is about this calendar. She may balk on it, but if she does, then I'll have
Correct that at that time.
Yes, but I think that'll work because we went.
We need a motion to accept this, right?
Yes, we have to have a motion to accept it, since y'all voted that's what we're going to do, approve the amendment.
I move we accept this new plan.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
If whenever you get to 6, if you'll notice, of course, I've got the brochure in here. Brochure was something we had to make up to be in compliance with the state. I mean, she gave me several items that we needed to do, several things that we needed to do. That was one of them. And of course, I sent y'all a copy. If there was anything that y'all needed to ask about or talk to me about or whatever, we can make a correction. Otherwise, then I'll send it to her once it gets approved on that. The 2012 annual report, if you'll see that, that's something that she had us to do, or had me to do. This is just to give kind of a description of what, about our district, things that's going on in our district, things that, it's not for everybody. Everybody has to do one of these reports. That's
Have we been
something
doing this in the past?
No.
No.
We also have a mass appraisal report that I put in here. That's to do with use tax. That report has to be, and y'all can review those, y'all can take them, y'all can look at them, whatever y'all want to do on those. The use tax report lets you know what I did this year to be, in compliance with our reappraisal plan that we had implemented. So this will let you know what I've done, what we went and did to have. And the master appraisal report has to be done every year. This yearly report, this annual report has to be done every year. The annual report's for the PR. That's just to let people know this is what we do. The mass appraisal report is more or less just for appraisal for the use tax card. Not only did we do these reports, we have also sent out letters to charitable organizations having to get the new applications back in. And I realized that everybody had already did these applications. We couldn't find them in the file, which I'm sure that they had been filed somewhere, which we did not go look through the storage building, which we could probably still do that and find them. But we went ahead and just updated records. That's what we did so that we'd be in compliance. We've got to have them on file. They got to be able to see. We did it for charitable organizations and we did it for the churches. We've also sent out letters to home owners that had homestead applications that were not in compliance. We have to have, whenever we get new homestead applications in, we have to have a copy of the driver's license and a copy of the vehicle registration in that address that's at that house, the physical location. And if it doesn't match, then we have to deny it, send it back to them. And we had been taking driver's license and electric bills. The state lady said that was not correct, so we had to send it back and get correct documents. Everything, they're checking everything, trying to make sure it's up to par. So
That's
make
not
sure
something new, that's
No,
been going on
for
for
a
quite
couple
some
of
time.
years, couple of
We
years.
have to comply in there and the vehicle restorations as well, so.
And the driver's license, like I said, and I realize even in a small county, and they say, well, we just got post office box. Well, the driver's license still, they put your physical address on the driver's license. And they will mail it to your address, your P.O. box or whatever, but you're going to have a physical address on there. And I know that a lot of people are kind of upset on, well, I already did this. Yes, we realize you did, but we did not have you do it right. So that was our fault. And we kind of ease people's feelings whenever we realize, hey, we're human, we do this. You know, we have to have it right, though.
Does everybody get to review this?
Good.
That's what I thought.
A lot of information.
Do you need any kind of formal approval on this, or is it just?
As long as y'all like it, whatever, unless y'all want to change it, or
Do you have to mail these out, or are they just available for
they're available for the public if they want them, we've got them. And if y'all would like for me to mail them, I can mail them. I will tell you one thing that we will be doing this fall, whenever we start the reappraisal on the west side of the county, we will be sending out 1D1s to the ones that are not recent, because she said they're not matching. Our state lady said they are not matching what we have on the computer. They have to match. And so that's another thing. I'm going to write a letter. I've got letters that I have wrote out, sent with everything I send out now. I've got a letter composed to let them know what it's for, and if they need any help on filling it out or whatever to get their acres right, then to let us know, and we'd be glad to help on that. Because it's got to match everything, or it's going to be kicked back from the state. The state will pull it.
I don't know that it's probably too late, well, it's obviously too late now for the May 15th mail out that you do, but this next year, we might put this in all the envelopes and mail it. I think it'd be a good idea.
Good information piece to sit down.
Yeah.
And sitting on these brochures, I have several examples of different brochures, and one of the brochures that they sent out was on the schedule, you know, like the calendar, and I thought that would be another good brochure to do one that's, this is when your deadline this is due, or whenever this is due, or, you know, just to give them a general idea. Or on homestead exemptions, or 1D1 exemptions, or, you know, something like that. That would be another good idea for a brochure. And just because we got one doesn't mean that they're going to say, well, I do, because we're going to have different things. You know. Our next deal that we've got to do is a PR plan. I've got a copy of what's required for one, but the PR plan is due next year. So that'll be something we'll be working on.
Anybody else have any questions on this part of it?
So,
Where you on the finance report?
Okay. Well, since it's just been 1 month since we met last on here. There's not much on the finance that's changed other than just our regular stuff that we've got going. I do have the budget set in here. The budgets changed up from last year. On some of it due to our, whenever y'all approved our upgrade in February, I got our contracts on that, and I put those on here. If you notice, the equipment lease on the 2014 has gone up to 18,500 as compared to 15,380. And on the school's budget, they went down to 8,925 from 10,560. Kevin had asked me to let y'all look at the contract. I went ahead and put the maps on for this coming year. And I put the employee benefits, the payroll taxes, they are based on our actual salary, not this, what they've got, what it's broke out into, 35 and 27. That's not what we make, but I've got it broke out just to what we make on this. And on the pool, because there's always an overage just a little bit, and then we have to, on the employee benefits, I calculated it for the 10,000, on the payroll taxes, I calculated it for the 10,000 in salary, so that it would be exact instead of being over. And before it was $1,000. They had $1,000 for both of those. I've got both this year's and last year's in here, if y'all are a bit confusing on, just to make it a comparison.
When do we have to have this budget finalized?
Is it in June?
June 15th, I think, but I'll have to go look at the property code.
I want to keep having it in here.
Yeah. Okay.
Just, that's preliminary, it's a preliminary budget. I've got the adopted budget in there for 2013, the preliminary for 2014, and I've got the comparison on each one.
This should carry us through that for 14.
I think so, I believe so. And then on these, I didn't know if y'all needed to vote on these contracts again, since y'all already approved the updates, but I've got the contracts here to be signed. So I did put them in the budget to be discussed.
This could be through, we'll have to do something for that.
Since we voted on them in February. The one deal that I went down on, the training cost and education, it's $10,500 this year. I put $5,000 for next year. The reason why there was so much this past year was due to, the contract we had with, Richard Petrie. And we had upped it. Of course, we paid most of it last year before it even hit.
We're gonna, under the 2014 budget, you're gonna put the map cost into the budget?
It's down here under preliminary budget. If you'll look where it says audit, telephone, mineral appraisal, and then it says maps. I'll put it in.
Well, I'm on the wrong page here. I understand we're over here under the, and we're gonna budget that in there, we're gonna use the.
The 2013, 2014 comparison, is that what you're looking at?
Right.
Okay, if you'll look down under mineral appraisal, it has the 43,000, and right underneath it, it says maps.
I see that, but what I'm saying, are we gonna budget this $12,000 in to pass on to the taxing units, or are we gonna
Correct.
take it out of the?
Correct. This next year, we're gonna go ahead and put it in there.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
that's a question.
Yes. Go ahead and put it in there, that way it will be, on our budget, that's the way it should have been.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, because in the past, we were taking the money out of,
Correct.
unbudgeted funds, so.
That's the reason why it went over this.
So you've got to have these budgets submitted by June 15th to the other entities.
Correct.
Right. So, we gotta make a decision today if this is gonna be all you're gonna need, right?
Correct. There is almost about 11,000 left in salaries. Just so y'all know that there is, because we've got it budgeted for 62. There is, of course, we've got a couple of things that we don't use that often, but it's still budgeted for small amounts, like the $300 in there for, what does I see that?
Equipment repair.
Yes.
You took the training costs and education down considerably, is that?
Correct, due to, the 10,500, the reason why we put it up that high was due to, having Mr. Petrie, we contracted with him, and we were using it out of that.
Okay.
And I took it down $5,500. I mean, if you don't want it down, we can leave it there, but I don't know that we'll be using $5,000 worth of training.
How much, are y'all through with school?
No.
How much are you looking at to pay
Yeah,
for school?
that's another thing that we are, it's quite, depending on the school, it's gonna be between probably $200 and $300 each school. And
That's just the cost of the school, that's not
Just the school, just the school.
travel
So
and
is
everything else.
5,000 gonna be enough to get y'all school the next year?
Yes. I believe so. Because we haven't used that much, That's another thing we're gonna be discussing in this next section. I will be hitting school August, 2 schools in August, a school in September, and I will be taking the refresher course for all the schools I have taken to get my test done for my class 3. I have been.
That's gonna come out of the 2013.
That's right, that's where 10,500 went.
Okay.
And that's gonna be our most schooling we're gonna have in a real short period of time. Everything else is usually kind of hit here and there.
Except for what you take in, after October, it'll come out the next budget.
Correct.
Well, we've got enough to cover all the schools.
January, ours.
Oh, okay, well, you're gonna,
January.
okay, all right.
Yes. Carla only has one more class to take, and then she gets to start her next level. While y'all are looking at this, I want to touch base real quick on this other. The reason why I'm having to do these classes just real quick, if you'll look, the 585, that section 585, or the House Bill 585 just went into effect. We will have to have a class 3 appraiser as chief appraiser by January 1st. I have been visiting with Bruce Medley. Bruce Medley has looked at my information that I have and looked at this stuff, and that's the reason why we found the classes. 2 of my classes will be in Amarillo, 1 of my classes in Austin. My refresher course will be in Austin, and then I'll be able to take the test once I get that refresher course, and I should be able to have everything that needs to be done by January 1st, to where we can still have our class 3 appraiser and not have to worry about it. If we do not have the class 3 appraiser in charge January 1st, y'all will be having to contract with someone else to come in that has an RPA. If you do not contract with someone that has an RPA, then the state will provide someone.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's a minor thing, I think, at this point. I mean, we've talked about this, and, everybody's under the same situation
Correct.
with this House Bill at 10, so there's a lot of people that's gone into role as a new appraiser that's not gonna be qualified. So you're gonna have to, if she's not, doesn't get everything done to them, then we'd have to contract with Kent County or King County or Haskell County or somebody to certify everything till she gets her license. And, that could be a problem.
And with, like I said, I've got it to where I can do my class 2 classes in August in Amarillo. I've got them, of course, they're going to be a week apart from each other, but I'll get it done. And then the next one, they actually do have a class in June that I can take, but it's also during the protest time, so I can't take it. So I had to push it back, and the next class will be September. And it's in Austin.
Okay, did we have to have attorney fees for this deal, this hearing that you had to go to over the stuff out in the corner of the county, the values, when y'all had the
We didn't have
arbitration?
attorney fees, we had to pay arbitration fees.
What does that come out of? Do we need to put some
Yeah,
money for
what did
that
we
in
put
case
that?
that comes back?
Ooh, I don't remember what that is. And before it did, I put it in.
Well, if those other people figure out that, we may have some more arbitration stuff that may come up with that down there.
We have, right now, we have 11 protests in
But you're referring to one of those
Yes, I know it,
outside.
but they have to protest first.
Where they gotta
do
go to
an
arbitration.
so.
I'm just wondering if we need some attorney fees in our budget.
What did we pay? Do you remember? And it's like I said, it was to the arbitrator, we had to pay to the arbitrator.
So where'd that money come from when you paid that?
That's what I was wondering. Let me go check real quick, let me go pull it, it won't take just a few seconds.
You're right, but we might need something in there. I don't know where to go through that again,
I don't know.
that's the first time we've been through it.
And the same person, Mr. Underwood, I think he's one.
Do what?
The same one's gonna purchase it, and even though the mineral values have gone down, but same guy's gonna try again.
If he doesn't get an agreement, then we'll go back to arbitration again, so,
Oh, you know he will.
yeah.
I'm thinking
Maybe
if
we
his
could-
neighbors get wind of everything,
Yeah.
then we may have more than just,
Somebody else wants to try.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm thinking we may need
Get an
some
arbitrator like we got
money
before.
somewhere
Might ought to put a
to
little money in there, just,
cover some, just
you know,
in case.
one time we had $15,000 in the attorney fee unallocated funds, but we took that money out and paid for the mapping system.
Mhm.
So, the first time,
So I'm thinking we need something in there
I
for
think
things like
you're
that.
right. I don't think we need to get
I don't want
caught.
to-
Odds are we will.
Yeah. I'd rather have it not spend it in the budget,
I agree.
It's
I agree,
than not,
you know,
not have it if we needed it.
we don't have it, and then we have to go back and
Yeah.
ask the taxing unit for more, and they don't particularly like that. They didn't budget for it either.
Now, on this one, you gotta remember too, there was 4 different counties on this arbitration, and we had to pay $225. And so in other words, we split it. But our county paid $225. So for the 4 counties, paid $220, yeah. So it's $500 for each person that he heard arbitration for. He heard it for 2 people. He heard it for the guy and his sister.
If this same guy does it again, and
I
Every
think
4
he's
counties
been
again, but-
blacklisted.
you think we ought to put $1,500, $2,000 in that
I
fund?
think we need to put something in there,
Yeah.
just in case.
Yeah.
What I did was put it in unbudgeted because we didn't have it on there.
Well, I think we better, unlike Renee, I believe we better budget some money on that.
Well, 1,500.
I don't know, I mean,
If it's $500 for an arbitration, it just depends on what,
If we don't have any other counties involved in it, then that might not be enough.
yeah. Attorney's fees get real high real quick.
right, and see, the deal is on the arbitrations, it's gonna be, unless we just wanted a lawyer there, they didn't have lawyers, it was just us.
When I should have had one.
And the
Well, you're
arbitrator.
dividing this up basically between 3 taxing units, county, school, and the hospital. So,
And arbitrations are not fun.
I don't know how, I mean, I don't know how much is enough.
I don't know, I don't know either, since we've not ever been down that road.
well, we put $1,500 in there, that's $500 of taxing unit. The city's out, because they don't have any.
Sounds good.
1,500 is enough.
That was my fault.
Let's back up a minute. Here, we've talked about House Bill 585, if we have to contract outside couple of months, we may have a little money to pay out.
That's why I mentioned there is 10,000, almost 11,000 left in salaries. So we do have that up there.
We have some money there. I don't know what
I
it
don't know how
costs us.
much.
I bet it costs us a couple $1,000 to
Did that.
contract with somebody. I mean,
You know, we talked about there, is Anya still licensed?
No,
you know,
Not? Okay.
we checked.
Okay.
There was, who was that guy that she was mentioning? I don't know who. Anyway,
I don't know.
Well, they're not gonna have to actually do anything, it's just has to
not,
be their
yeah,
name.
other than they might have to travel down here or
Yeah.
something, so I don't guess that's maybe not a major,
Yeah,
unless they want to charge us a fee for doing it.
yeah, using their devices.
Yeah, user fee or something, that could be a lot
I know
of.
someone personally, or?
but as long as we can get the schooling in, I can get my schooling in, there shouldn't be a problem with that. As long as I'm a class 3 appraiser by January 1st, 2014. And I was thinking that there was a waiting period or a waiting time, and Bruce Medley pointed out to me the class 4 you have to wait 3 years before you can do your class 4 test, not the class 3. I said, okay, good.
Yeah.
Just, you have to have all those classes taken before you take that exam.
Okay, and then like you said, we've got a little cushion.
Well, maybe we're okay there.
Budget bill, so.
So that make it 179,621. 69.
So do we need to approve the
I
budget
just think
then?
we just make, since you gotta have it within 2 weeks, basically, we'll go ahead and approve it.
Yeah, we're gonna have.
Get it done,
Yeah.
Do we have a motion to approve it?
I'll move we approve it at that level.
Do we have a second?
I'll say it.
Second by Kenny, all those in favor?
And the last little deal, like the 585, that's what, it was brought to our attention, Kenny brought it into it. And that's the reason why we knew about it, was because one of the other, appraisal districts gave it to him, and he brought it in here. Then whenever, I heard about it, then of course I contacted, several people, and then I've been talking with Bruce Medley, and Bruce Medley says we should be able to get it. It'll be all right, as long as I get my classes and get my tests taken. And it's just something that y'all needed to be aware of.
Somebody probably has brought this up to some legislator in a different county, and then we get legislation, you know, and it really affects the rural counties, doesn't it?
Well, see, and what had happened is they had actually started out on House Bill 2224. And whenever they couldn't get it to pass on House Bill 2224, they changed it over. They put it in, they snuck it in. They did that.
Yeah.
Into House Bill 585, and the 585 is the one that passed it. Senate passed it, and within a few days, the House passed it. So, right. And that
Well,
was,
they do a lot of things.
yes, it is, and they don't know what they're doing about half the time. And as you can read, I mean, the one little deal in here, it says in here regarding the amendments, if chief appraisers who haven't reached TDLR Class 3 by January 1 will be ineligible to continue holding office. So that's the reason why I'll get it. gonna be a lot of time, and August and September are kind of slower months for us for the, collections and stuff like that. So those are the months I'm gonna hit, those are the months that she'll be able to buy herself. But that'll be okay.
For me enough. Oh,
Kim.
Does anybody else have any old or new business or anything, nothing or anything else?
That's it. That's all my news. Hopefully, that was bad enough. I didn't.
We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Second. All right, all those in favor?
Maybe it's like those kind of people move on. When you're on, you have to be stuck in with